Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, our weekly political update with the Arizona Capital-Times will focus on the legislature's budget agreement. A discussion on American Indian education, and celebrity theater turns 50 years old. Find out about its history and one man's dream to own it. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Steve Goldstein in for Ted Simons tonight. The legislature locked in a deal on the state budget this week. That means a light at the end of the tunnel for Sine Die. Here with more on our weekly political update is Ben Giles of the Arizona Capital-Times. Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
What's a few $1 million between Friends, Ben, on a $9.2 billion budget, I guess, right? What led to the compromise between the Senate and the House?
Friends is a strong word when we're talking about our lawmakers at the Capitol, but you're right, it was roughly $20–30 million that was being haggled over throughout the weekend, basically, and we came back Monday and a deal had come out of nowhere, it seemed, but $9.23 billion was agreed upon, and the Senate passed it, the House passed it into the not-so-wee hours of Monday night, and all indications are that it's a budget that Governor Brewer is willing to sign, and we can move on and start to wrap up the rest of session now.
Where did the compromise begin? Who inched a little bit, and on what?
Well, I think the first real olive branch you saw was last Thursday. You had Governor Brewer and House Speaker Andy Tobin come together with a joint proposal, and that was a good sign, a good indication that the governor was ready for this stalemate to end. And they presented it to Senate President Andy Biggs, who was hesitant at first to accept it, but after just a little bit more of give and take, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in a $9.2 billion budget, there was finally a deal reached. We were talking K-12 funding, specifically for district charter schools. We're talking about university funding as well, $4.5 million to split between Northern Arizona University, the Arizona State University, and the U of A. We're also talking a little bit of finagling of money over CPS, but we finally have a deal.
The district charter schools was a very controversial issue that caught many of us by surprise. Where's the compromise on that? How much money had been allotted for in the past, and how much could be for the next fiscal year if the governor signs?
Well, the interesting issue is it's not so much money allotted in the past. What happened was in fiscal 2014, there were roughly 59 schools who, for the first time, decided to become district charters in a search for more funding, because a lot of superintendents will tell you that Arizona hasn't done enough lately to fund K-12 education, so they're looking for any avenue, and they found a completely legal one within Arizona's laws to get a little bit of extra funding out of the state. But lawmakers like Andy Biggs saw that and saw the escalating number of schools converting public schools to charters, saw how much that was going to cost in the future, and kind of saw doom and gloom on the horizon if that was going to keep up. So it was about $33 million estimated that would be needed for those 59 schools in fiscal 2015. The final agreed upon figure, $24.5 million for them to operate. But the trick is, after the upcoming fiscal year, they're either going to have to operate as traditional charter schools outside the K-12 public funding system, or go back to being public schools.
Well, to be cynical, can we look at that as a kicking the can down the road, and it'll have to be faced by the next legislature then?
Not so much. This year, I think the fact that they were able to agree on funding to even allow those schools to operate, maybe not at the full capacity they wanted to, but certainly there were proposals to not kick the can, just kind of kick them in the teeth this year and provide no funding at all. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's an issue that's revisited next year. The plan in this budget, we only actually budget for one fiscal year, but we do try to take a look, lawmakers at the Capitol, at the next 3 years. There is no plan for funding in the 2 years following the next one, but it wouldn't surprise me if there is a push for some more funding.
You mentioned the Senate President on district charter schools. He is also not the biggest fan of a lot of increased funding for CPS or whatever the next agency is going to be. What's the next step for that? How likely are we to see a special session to really figure out how much money should go towards CPS?
I think the governor's office has indicated that's going to be needed, and certainly she can call a special session, whether the lawmakers want her to or not. That happened last year. But I think even the leadership in the Senate and the House agree that this is the likeliest scenario for how to deal with the creation of the new CPS, whatever it's going to be called. The name was actually discussed at a CPS reform work group meeting last Friday, April 4th. They're still trying to decide what they're going to call it. But they're getting close. They're drafting legislation because you need to, from a legal standpoint, sever CPS as we know it from the Department of Economic Security and establish it on its own 2 feet as this independent agency, and that's a massive undertaking. But then what a lot of lawmakers were discussing as a part of the budget negotiations was how much funding is going to be needed to make sure this agency succeeds, not just in becoming independent, but going forward succeeding in ways that CPS hasn't for decades, it seems.
Ben, considering how much momentum there was for this with the governor's state of the state, emergency funding for CPS, should we be surprised that it hasn't moved a little bit faster, or as you mentioned, there are a lot of complex issues involved?
You know, the CPS issue itself,
Yeah.
I think it is a pretty complex issue, and I think that maybe an artificial deadline that was set by this reform work group to have legislation ready by May 1st was particularly ambitious, given that they want to sever the agency at the start of the upcoming fiscal year, July 1st. It's no easy task just to find, well, where's the infrastructure going to be for this agency? What building are we going to put these employees in? Who do we need to hire? Who do we need to transition? There's things like payroll to be discussed. There's a lot of technicalities that have to be gone over, and that's what they've been working on. But then there is also the more philosophical, big picture things to consider about CPS. What do we want the agency's mission to be? What do we want it to prioritize? And certainly I think if you look at some of the missteps of CPS, particularly with those more than 6,500 uninvestigated reports of abuse and neglect, you're going to see a focus in those areas to make sure that those problems continue to be fixed and then don't pop up again.
Ben, very briefly, are you in a betting pool as far as when sine die is? When do you think it's going to happen?
I didn't put any money down this year. There is a sine die pool, but a lot of lawmakers are gunning for next Wednesday. If they are able to sine die on Wednesday of next week, that would be the shortest session since 1969. And as Senate President Biggs said, wouldn't that be quite an accomplishment? Maybe more realistically, we'll be here through the end of next week, but after that, it could be sine die until the governor calls us back to fix CPS.
Hallelujah. Ben, thank you for the conversation. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. An event will be held at Arizona State University's Tempe campus tomorrow to address issues regarding American Indian education. Moving beyond the asterisk, understanding Native students in higher education, will look at the role universities can play in enabling the success of American Indian students. Joining me now is one of the presenters, Dr. Heather Schotten, an assistant professor of Native American Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Also here is Dr. Brian Brayboy, an ASU professor of Indigenous Education. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Dr. Schotten, let's talk about the core of this issue. How many students are affected by this, and where did the problem originate?
Well, I don't know in terms of exact numbers. I would say that the majority of Native students are impacted by this issue of really relative invisibility on many of our campuses. It doesn't mean that they're not there. It's that many of our institutions have a real lack of understanding of what issues Native students face and how to help them to be successful.
Why is the problem in existence in the first place? Is there this feeling that Native American students have been de-emphasized and ignored? When I mentioned the word asterisk, I start to think about this idea of just, I don't know, almost this idea that they're just sort of there because we need to fill some sort of gap that people might think exists, but once they get there, okay, we're not going to pay attention anymore.
Well, I think the asterisk represents a mentality that is pervasive in a lot of our higher education institutions, and that is that oftentimes our data leaves out Native students and Native people in general, creating this kind of asterisk mentality where we don't look at the issues, we don't really think about Native students or Native people when we think about mainstream media or in our everyday curriculum in our schools. Native people are really seen in a historical sense. We don't see Native people in a contemporary context, and so it's really difficult for our institutions to address the needs of our students when we don't see them in a contemporary context.
How much of a culture shock can there be for Native American students, and what can universities and colleges do to limit that?
I think that well, one, there's a difference, and it's different for every student. To assume that all of our Native students have the same experience is a mistake. They come from different backgrounds. Some are coming from reservation areas, some from urban areas. Different tribes represent different experiences. But I do think that many of our students do encounter a different culture when they come onto our mainstream institution campuses. And so it can be a bit of a culture shock. It's a different culture, a different context. I think that our universities can work with our students by understanding the tribal cultures from which they come and what values they bring with them, and understanding what their unique needs are.
Dr. Brayboy, how big a problem is this on campuses, even across the West, which would surprise me?
It's a significant issue, and I think that Heather's point is right on in terms of us needing to pay attention to Native peoples in a contemporary sense. We continue to get framed as something from the past, and I think these cultural issues are really important. I also think it's important not just for institutions to think about the cultures of their students, but for us to pay attention to the culture of the institution. Sometimes we say, well, this is just how institutions of higher education work, and I think part of the good work that Heather and others are doing is really pointing to the fact that there are these cultures at these institutions that need to be spelled out. Sometimes there are rules that need to be followed that are often implicit for many folks, and some of this is about making those rules and the ways in which the institutions work more explicit.
Even before we get to the culture on a campus per se, I'm interested in this idea of how Native American students may be drawn to a certain university. One thing that pops to mind for me is not many months ago, Lou Ann Leonard on the Arizona Board of Regents wanted to make it clear that so Navajo students would get in-state tuition in Arizona. Many of us were surprised that didn't already exist.
Sure.
Is that a concern as well, this idea that because reservations are slightly different in some sense, that people are not treating those as in-state students, and that's another problem we need to get over?
It absolutely is, and I applaud Regent Leonard for doing her good work in terms of getting in-state tuition for individuals who are members of tribal nations. Arizona's 22 tribal nations, whether they live here or not. And a reservation like Navajo covers multiple states, and students are drawn to a place like Arizona State University because of the excellence of its faculty, because of the excellence of the programs that are being offered to it. It's close enough to home to be able to get back and forth easily via automobile or bus. And it's important to really think about, we're talking about the culture of the institution, but that as a separate entity means that students are also going to want to try to go home for what some of us call cultural sustenance, to try to figure out how to manage the institution while they're maintaining who they are as Indigenous peoples.
Dr. Schotten, in general, do universities do a good job of embracing diversity in a real hardcore sense, not just paying lip service to it?
I think that universities can do better. I think particularly when it comes to Native students, it's important to understand that we often talk about diversity in terms of race. But when we're talking about Native students, we're talking about members of sovereign nations. And so universities need to do better across the nation in understanding the unique status of Native students and that they are citizens of sovereign nations. And so with that understanding, I think that that's an initial step in helping to serve Native students.
Dr. Brigwood, thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that's exactly right. And I think that sometimes what we do is we fail to recognize this unique status that Native peoples have. Sometimes it shows up in casinos. Why is it that we have these casinos? But really what's embedded underneath all of that is really this unique status as tribal nations, and paying more attention to that makes sense. I also think it's important that we pay attention to where institutions are located. A place like Arizona State is on O'odham lands. There's people who have been living on for millennia, really having a fundamental understanding of what that is. I think most people who are driving up the 101, for example, whether they're headed north or south, fail to realize that they're traveling through Native people's lands that are still their lands, whether they're shopping in places that are still Native people's lands. So I think having a fundamental understanding of the fact that they're different places gets at the fact that we need to sort of not move well beyond this as treating diversity as a racialized issue.
Dr. Schotten, I wonder as well, there shouldn't be a fear of this, of course, but there are always backlashes, I suppose, in some of these things. If we start talking too much about one particular group, even one that in many ways has been ignored for generations, is there a way to approach that in a sense so that people don't feel threatened? Should we worry about that?
I think there's always that potential, especially when we're paying attention to one group. And oftentimes we hear that in our institutions. Well, if we do this for Native students, then what about other students? And we have to do it for everyone. And again, I think it goes back to our status as citizens of sovereign nations. And so we're really dealing in a nation-to-nation approach. So one sovereign state is a sovereign to another sovereign, and so we're dealing with a political entity. And so I think that that's a really important way to approach the way that we're dealing with Native students and dealing with tribes.
Dr. Brayboy, for both of you, but I want to start with you on this. The generational difference when we talk about folks who come from reservations or have a tribal background, how difficult is that in the sense that as we have younger students, perhaps the past generations didn't go to a large university like Arizona State, so there's even more of that culture shock I mentioned before, and they don't necessarily have that relative they can lean on. So how much of a challenge does that make it as well?
I think it's a tremendous challenge, and I think if you look at the literature on this topic, what ends up showing up is that students who stay often stay because of one really positive relationship. That positive relationship doesn't necessarily need to be with a Native person. It needs to be with someone at the institution who helps them navigate that institution, maybe someone off of the institution who says, you're going to this institution of higher learning to try to serve your community or try to make a future for yourself that's different maybe than your family's. On the converse, we have instances where people leave, and they can often leave because of one bad relationship with an office, with an individual, whether it's a faculty member or a staff, or even someone who's not affiliated with the university. So I do think that there's a generation of people who didn't go to college, Native peoples who didn't go to college, that I think they don't necessarily know how to talk to young people about this. They're certainly committed to the issue, however, of having young people go to college, and so there's support there. Whether or not they understand the rules and the way the institution works, it's a different story. But fundamentally, higher education is about relationships and relationship building.
Dr. Schotten, please follow up on that.
I would absolutely agree. Many of our students are first generation. They're the first in their families, not just their immediate family, often their extended larger family, or in their communities, pursuing higher education, whether it be an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree. And so they don't have resources to tell them how to navigate this. So those relationships, like as Dr. Brayboy was saying, are key. Having relationships with people on campus to help ameliorate some of the issues, the isolation that they may be feeling, and not understanding how to navigate. Universities can be very complex systems, and so if you don't have that knowledge of how to navigate a system like that, it can be very, very difficult to be successful. So relationships and having positive experiences are really key for Native students.
And without talking about Native Americans in a monolithic sense, what should the goals be after what we hope is a good experience at a university? Is there the desire to go back and help communities? Should that be the main goal? Should it be to expand upon what people have learned in having left a reservation?
I think that what we have found more and more in research with Native students in higher education is that the motivation for a college degree is to give back. Sometimes that's to go back into their home communities and give back. How we define that is different. For some, it may be giving back to the broader Native community, and students are finding, graduates are finding different ways to do that. We have to do a better job at our institutions of helping them to figure out how to utilize their education in a way that that gives back to communities and benefits the broader community, seeing that that's a large motivating factor.
Dr. Brayboy, brief conclusion?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think that the evidence is overwhelming that for students who Native students who finish institutions of higher education, primarily they're motivated by giving back to larger communities. And at a state institution like Arizona State University or University of Oklahoma, part of our mission is to help make the society in which we live better.
Thank you both for the conversation.
Thank you.
In today's Art Beat segment, we look at the iconic Celebrity Theater. It's now 50 years old. The theater has hosted everyone from Sammy Davis Jr. to Bruce Springsteen. Producer Shauna Fisher and photographers Ed Kishel and Scott Olson show us how one man turned his childhood dream into a reality we can all enjoy.
As a little boy, Rich Hazelwood knew he would own the Celebrity Theater one day.
My paper route was across the street, and I would ride my bike by here going to my paper route when they started building it. And we would stop, since I was an early morning paper boy, a Republic paper boy, we used to watch them bring all the cranes and stuff in to build it.
Some 40 years later, and his wish has come true. Hazelwood bought the theater in 2002 and has put more than $1 million into renovating it.
I'm not a musical person, I'm a business guy. And I looked at all of the things that I thought the positive parts that I could fix up and make the place really good. As you look around, you can see the incredible change that the place has gone through over the last 10 or 12 years. We just keep getting a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. The acts get a little bit better. Those are the kind of things that drive me. I'm not musical at all.
One thing that hasn't changed about the 192-foot diameter theater, the intimate setting. It can hold 2,650, and there isn't a bad seat in the house.
The experience I think you get from coming to a concert here is that you're in the middle of an act, especially in a sold out act. You just are a part of it. The furthest seat's 72 feet from the stage, so you're right in the middle of it. And the act, you can tell the act because they know they're in the middle of it. And that enthusiasm builds throughout the whole place. It's an incredible feeling when everybody's on their feet and singing or dancing or screaming. It's an incredible feeling.
Adding to the uniqueness of the theater is its 360-degree rotating stage that puts an act directly in front of fans. Because of its small size and partly because of that round stage, it can sometimes be hard to book musical acts. So Hazelwood and his team worked hard to get the theater designated an historic landmark.
A lot of acts won't play around theater. And I just think the fact that we have got a historical designation, believe it or not, it turns the acts on. So I think when they come in and they know all of these things and we try to relay that to them, then they start to feel a little bit more important by playing here. So that's a big plus for us.
It's not just the building itself that has history. Step into the lounge and all around is memorabilia from the last 50 years. a Bruce Springsteen concert t-shirt, a signed Stevie Nicks photo, a ticket stub from Diana Ross's concert, and dozens of autographed guitars.
I think if we own something, sometimes we start to really take it for granted. I think that's the fun part of owning this place, is standing on the stage, knowing maybe last night or the night before we had an incredible act on the stage, and I own it. I think that's really exciting to me. Where's the show?
The building was designed by architect Perry Neuschatz to be a multi-purpose convention center. The theater opened January the 13th, 1964 with the musical South Pacific. That is it for now. I'm Steve Goldstein. Ted will be back tomorrow. We hope you have a great night.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.